Hello there, and welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Meyers. We're here every week meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues. And today, a subject that, frankly, I was not all that much aware of.
Well, I was not as well, and that's why we're doing the show. We are thrilled to have Sarah Adams-Cornell join us as our guest today. She is a member of the Choctaw Nation, but she is very active in the organization Mmiw, which is Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, as well as she's familiar with what the legislature did on IDA's law, and we're going to do a lot of talking about that. The stories that she can tell and the information she'll give is quite valuable, and we want our viewers to have it.
We'll be right back. You're watching The Verdict.
Right now, 6 feet can feel like a long ways away. But from 6 feet, we can still smile at each other. From our doorways and our stairways, from opposite sides of the street and opposite sides of the country. Through fear and frustrations, we can remind each other that we are still here for each other. Because we can still smile at each other. And we're not going anywhere.
Our first day ride was a 96-mile ride. And I looked at that and I thought, my goodness, 96 miles on the first day of a bike ride? And I made it. I rode 104 miles that day. I am Steve Paniawa, a retired classroom teacher, and I am Chickasaw. On a bicycle, I feel that there's a freedom that I don't have anywhere else. I think the freedom is a big part of it, but you challenge yourself. You're competing with yourself. I'm diabetic, and when I found out, it didn't stop me. Sometimes I say to myself, there are millions and millions riding right now, and they're not pulling over. So Steve, you gotta keep going. It's one of those feelings that you get that, aha, I've accomplished something. I never thought I would go this far.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofanation.com.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Today, as I indicated in the open, we are thrilled to have Sarah Adams-Cornell join us to talk about a topic that isn't pleasant to talk about, but is absolutely necessary to discuss. Mmiw are the initials used to identify missing and murdered Indigenous women. It is a topic that is eye-opening to listen to, and the statistics that she will be able to give in describing the problem will be equally fascinating to you and recognize why she is so concerned about it and why so many are concerned about it. Sarah is a member of the Choctaw Nation and has been an active advocate for Native American rights for quite a while in Oklahoma. She attended Cottey College and the University of Oklahoma. She just completed her second term as OU's activist in residence, which we want to ask her about. She co-created the Matriarch organization that advances Native American rights. She's president of the board of directors for the ACLU of Oklahoma, and she has been involved in many other activities and charitable enterprises trying to help the plight of abused and deprived women of indigenous origin. Sarah, we're really glad to have you. Thanks for all the good work you're doing, and we hope to hear about it on your show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here with you today.
Sarah, what prompted you to get involved as an advocate for American Indian rights?
Well, I don't think anybody actually plans to be an advocate or to do advocacy work. I think it's usually born of necessity. And so for me, once I became more aware of issues within the community, and especially when I became a mother, it was much more apparent to me the work that needed to be done in our community concerning Indigenous rights and education, especially education. It was actually my daughters, when they went to school and they were asked to participate in land run reenactments, that really got me started. It's something, if you grew up in Oklahoma, you probably were a part of a land run reenactment at some point in your educational career, usually in about third grade. And I realized that we were still doing this in the state, and that there was a much better, more equitable way to teach about Oklahoma and who was here on this land before contact, before statehood, and how Oklahoma became a state from several different perspectives. And so that's something that really got me started. And once we, as many of you know, as you get into the work, there are more things, more work to do. At some point, I would love to be out of a job and for all of the issues to be solved, but right now there's still a lot of work to do.
Well, you've got a lot on your plate. Let me ask you, you served 2 terms as OU's activist in residence. What does that mean?
It's an incredible program that they have at OU. I worked with Dr. Voiles and Susie Jorgensen there at OU for the Center for Justice. They've had this program for quite a while, and they focus every year. I think they have 2 different activists, a fall and a spring, that they bring on campus to really interact with students, teach them how to do the work, because in a lot of ways, you don't have to reinvent the wheel whenever there's an issue that you're really passionate about, and having time with people who have done the work can be really helpful. And so they've highlighted a number of people over the years, incredible people who are doing that kind of work all over the nation. It's not just something, I was local, which was great, but they bring in people from all over the nation for this program, and it was just a joy. My work centered around Mmiw, missing and murdered Indigenous women. We did everything from host a panel with incredible Indigenous women who are doing the work in the community, to not just search, but who are writing policy, and they are and everything in between, creating flyers, helping families through the process of, being in a space that you never want to be in when one of your relatives go missing, and not knowing what steps to take. And so we had a large conversation about that. We also did a training about what to do if one of your relatives goes missing, kind of boots on the ground training. And it was just an incredible time, very tough topic, as we discussed previously. It's something that we don't want to have to talk about, but it's very necessary considering the rate of Indigenous women who go missing and or murdered every year. It's a crisis situation, and specifically in Oklahoma, because we have such a high rate of Indigenous people.
I noticed in some of the materials I looked at in getting ready for this show that the Department of Justice has put out a statistic that indicates that Indian women are 10 times more likely to be murdered than any other group in this country. And that is astounding. Why do you think that's so?
There are a lot of reasons. Systemic racism, the fact that Indigenous people, Black and brown bodies, have been devalued since the time of invasion. And I would direct everyone to a really important study that Illuminatives put out. It's the most contemporary data that we have that shows that in the United States, there are citizens who don't believe that Indigenous people still exist. And there is a group of our population who believes that Indigenous people are actually subhuman. And so when you look at that data, it's pretty easy to see that if you don't believe that Indigenous people are actually human, that it's easier to harm those people. Because we do not represent a large part of the population, we're often depicted in things like mascots and so in ways that just do not show us as a contemporary and thriving people. And that with the fact that we see so many of our women who are victim to sexual assault and domestic violence, it all works together. There's not one piece that you could hold out and say, this is why. There are several different pieces that have to work together to make MMIW the crisis that it is.
Discuss Ida's law. The legislature, I guess, in this last session passed something that I read was called Ida's Law. I knew we were doing this show with you, so I wanted to ask your take on Ida's Law. Why is it named that, and what does it do?
Absolutely. It's an incredibly important piece of legislation. We owe a great deal of thanks to Lorinda Morgan, who championed this bill. Actually, the legislative session before last, and then this last legislative session. And it's named after her cousin, Ida Beard, who was also Cheyenne and Arapaho and went missing in 2015. And what Ida's Law does is it directs the OSBI to work with the U.S. Department of Justice to create a local Office of Liaison for MMIW people. And they, alongside tribal police, will work together to create protocols for law enforcement when they are out on calls to respond to missing and murdered Indigenous people, or missing people at that point. And to really help serve as a guide to help these families who don't know exactly what it is, the steps that they're supposed to be taking, how to file a police report. And another incredible piece is the data that will be collected. There will be a database that's created because we just don't have good data to show, where these women were, the circumstances. There are so many of our relatives who don't ever even report a lot of the crimes that are happening because they just don't feel that police will be helpful, because historically speaking, the vast majority of these cases have fallen through the cracks because of jurisdictional issues, which to me are a lot of excuses about why not to investigate these cases. The Ida's Law does a really important piece to help bridge that gap between those jurisdictions, between federal, state, local, tribal entities, to make sure that we are doing the best we can to find our Indigenous relatives.
Our guest is Sarah Adams-Cornell. We'll be right back. You're watching The Verdict.
OU Law has a history and heritage that are unparalleled. At the University of Oklahoma College of Law, we empower our students to pursue the career of their dreams. We have the highest U.S. News ranking ever achieved by an Oklahoma law school. We are the first law school in the country to launch a college-wide digital initiative. And this year, our competition teams rank number 2 in the nation. OU Law, generations of excellence, limitless possibilities.
We want to reach out to every veteran we can in Oklahoma. There's somewhere around 340,000 veterans here in Oklahoma, and half of those are still unaware of their benefits or don't know how to go about getting them.
We help guide the veterans through the VA system. It's a giant maze, and we kind of help guide them through that maze. So our job is to try to help the veterans get everything that they're legally entitled to. There's just a special place in my heart for our Vietnam veterans and our World War II veterans, as well as any veteran, and that's why I do the job.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Meyers and our guest Sarah Adams-Cornell. Sarah, what is the organization Matriarch, and how did that get started?
Matriarch is a nonprofit organization that I co-founded with my Choctaw sister, Kendra Wilson Clements, about almost 6 years ago now. It really, again, was born of a need. We were seeing a high rate of our children and youth who were dying by suicide, and there were just not enough services. And so we came together to really start to have Indigenous women teaching Indigenous women. We know that these are skills that can be learned to be able to teach our children methods of coping and all of the ways that are actually built into our cultural ways that help reduce those kinds of outcomes. And as we got started, we realized there are so many other issues within our community that we wanted to learn about. And so we started this nonprofit organization where we meet twice a month. There's a different topic that's discussed. And then we do fun things in between, like beading or sewing. And it really is trauma healing work. And we need more spaces in our community for our Black and Brown women to come together to do that work. And this is just one of them. There are many Mmiw groups across the state who are also leaning in and doing the work for our Mmiw families. So this is just one group that's helping to be a safety net for Indigenous women and children in our community.
Let me ask you about the relationship that you have with the Oklahoma City Police Task Force. What's involved with that?
Yeah, there's the mayor appointed several members of the community, asked many members of the community to serve on the police task force to be honest and open about our relationship with the police in Oklahoma City, to hold listening sessions throughout our community, to gather information and data about what we would like to see as best practices, things that are working, things that aren't working. It has been an interesting process. Sometimes it is incredibly frustrating. Sometimes it feels a little performative, but we know that policy is created in such a way that it does take a long time. It takes much longer than I would like to see change happen, because we see that Black and Brown people are killed disproportionately by police in Oklahoma City, and we want to see that change. And so a lot of us are devoting our time to sit on this task force and to help kind of represent and give voice to those in our community who have something to say on the topic.
Sarah, talk about the Anti Project. What does that involve?
It's so much fun. So the Anti Project was founded by Dr. Amanda Cobb Greetham, who's at the University of Oklahoma as well, and just a brilliant woman. And she brought us together initially because immigrant children were being separated from their families at the border, and that there were a lot of needs. A lot of times there wasn't enough food, there wasn't enough bedding. There were a lot of needs, and the Anti Project came together to raise funds, and we did to help in that situation. Well, we also realized there was a lot of need in our community as well, and so we've done things like partnered with the Oklahoma Regional Food Bank to provide food for Sovereign Community School, an incredible Indigenous school in Oklahoma City that's now enrolling for 5th through 11th grade. We have done work with youth sports groups that needed to revamp their locker room. And we're continuing to look at different projects that need help. But it is just a joy, a group of Indigenous women who are, I'm so lucky to be a part of them, because they are really just movers and shakers, and I've learned so much from that organization.
Now, let's make it clear. We are not saying anti in spelling it A-N-T-I. We're saying A-U-N. TIE, are we not?
That's correct.
Okay.
Because we are aunties, and we are, I think it's important that all of our children have aunties in their lives, women who come alongside them in difficult situations when there is a need. And I think everybody can think of that special auntie in their life, whether or not they are blood relation, but have been important to their lives to fill a need. And that's what we want to do as just aunties in the community that you can come to when there's a need.
What about the Sovereign Community School you mentioned just a minute ago? Talk to us about that.
It's an incredible place. It is an indigenous charter school in Oklahoma City. And we are going to be enrolling for year 3 for 5th through 11th grade. And it is just so special. It's a place where education is really seen through an indigenous lens. And the priority was set by the community to say wellness needs to be a priority. And wellness to us means holistic wellness. So that mental wellness, spiritual wellness, relational wellness, educational wellness, all of the things are being addressed. And so our kids are learning things like how to de-escalate, how to identify emotions, how to keep their bodies well, how to be in relationships and make those healthy. A lot of things that are really not being covered in other schools is really teachable stuff for our kids that make a world of difference, because we know that when you aren't mentally well, it is hard to learn. It's hard to do anything else if you have children who are suicidal or harming. Learning kind of comes to a halt. And so we have to make sure that we are providing holistic education. And it's just a really special place, incredible teachers. And we just hired a new principal superintendent, and we're so excited for the coming school year.
Sarah, we got about a minute and a half left. The Mmiw, what can our viewers do if they want to get involved in that cause?
Absolutely. I would say vote for legislators who will see laws that didn't get passed this last legislative session, like House Bill 1790, the Casey Alert Act, formerly the Aubrey Alert Act that Brenda Golden championed. Do things, if you see it on social media, we post all the time when we're going to search for a family. Help us come and do that search. Repost that poster on your social media and help us spread the word about our relatives. Donate money to those groups who are doing the searching, and just be aware of the land that you're on, and that it is indigenous land, and to be a good ally.
Is there a website for Mmiw?
There are several different websites for Mmiw in Oklahoma. If you look up Mmiw Capital City, that's one of them that you can go to. But we all kind of share the same information. If you go to Matriarch OK on Facebook as well, you'll see posters there as well. So you can get plugged in a variety of ways.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah Adams-Cornell, thanks so much for being on The Verdict. You've enlightened us on a lot of different subjects, and you're to be commended for the breadth of your causes, I think.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good luck.
All right. And Kent and I'll have a final word on this show when we get back.
It used to be okay in teachers' lounges. It used to be okay in maternity wards. It was okay in sporting arenas, college campuses, and office spaces. But now that we understand the deadly dangers of secondhand smoke, that's not okay anymore. So why is it okay that thousands of employees are exposed to it every day at work? Bottom line, it's not okay. Let's protect hardworking Oklahomans. Join the fight at stopswithme.com.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
I think for us, once we got started and we began to see the tremendous need just within our state, it really was just a calling for us. The blessings far outweigh any obstacles that we've faced.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Sarah Adams-Cornell has been our guest today on The Verdict, a well-known activist, not only here in Oklahoma, but nationally.
Yeah, a mother growing up in Oklahoma City. She is really well thought of in the community that look after Mmiw folks. It's a tragic story to have to tell, and we don't like having to tell it, but we think it's important to you, our viewers, that we do make you aware of it if perchance you weren't already.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, you know, I thought the kind of the breadth of her causes was very interesting. And,
Yeah.
and I think what that illustrates is that she's someone who gets things done. And, you know, if you're a cause and you think you're being ignored, you're looking for a spokesperson who can get some attention and get things done, and she fits that bill.
Well, she does. She's very articulate and knows what she's talking about and has the facts to back her up.
We've got some website information. During the show, she mentioned one that had to do with the missing, murdered, or indigenous women. That was mmiw.capitalcity.com. And we have a website. We'd love for you to log on and tell us about a guest you'd like to see on an upcoming edition of The Verdict. Maybe it's a topic you'd like to see us discuss. Anyway, send us an email and we'll take a look at it and see if we can't get it on a future edition of The Verdict. But that's going to be it for this week's show. We'll see you next time.